Oh, we're live. We got a new intro going. Anyway, truths collide in Canada as liberals and media distort reality, and that seems to be the kind of the message out there. And we've had the media basically on trial in committee the last few days. They're not much into being open and transparent, and that's you, the taxpayer, paying for that. But we've got lots to talk about here in today's really big show. One of the big things we have going on, though, Jasmin Laine is going to be joining us here at 10:30 Pacific Standard Time. But we've got lots to talk about, though, so let's get into it.
Welcome to the Really Big Show with Jim Check and Ian Burns.
We always try to make small refinements every day to the show here, and we're trying again to make small refinements here as we try to maybe not read all the headlines. We do have the headlines kind of scrolling on the bottom of the screen there now, but we got lots going on though. And one of the things that we're going to show you today is the squandered wealth is becoming so painfully obvious in Canada here. Energy is everything. We say that on this show over and over and over and over again. And it seems to be, it's with what's going on in the world right now, that is becoming front and center. And then the media is really exposing itself as well for what they've been doing over the past few years. They've really kind of like exposed their underbelly, as you could say. And that's a big part of our story load today as well. But we got some feedback here. Someone says they love this new show. And I like the old guy's perspective. I think this is yesterday's. I don't think we changed that, though. There you go. Didn't have time. But hey, the old guy and the young guy with the beautiful hair. One thing we're not afraid of on this show. One thing we're not afraid of on this show is we're not scared to speak the truth. And perhaps we will be later when they decide that they're going to start regulating. There's a clip that we did yesterday that is worth watching. Ian talked a lot about media in Canada and about accredited media and credentialed media in that Liberal committee meeting. You should go find that on our. I think that one's really relevant right now, and I think everybody should watch that and share that as far and wide as you can, because I think a lot of that's going to come. Ian said yesterday, file that one in the back of your head, and I think you're going to need it as we get to it. But the big story in Canada right now is the Liberals are inching towards a majority, and not in the way democracy works. And then Mark Carney likes to talk about, hockey all the time. And he may get his Stanley Cup here, the championship or the Liberal majority here on April when they do those by-elections. But if you think about it in a hockey way, you're going to get a tainted cup because those 4 crossovers should be by-elections as well. You're already doing 3 by-elections. Why not do the other 4? Otherwise, you have a tainted win. And if you're so confident, then you should do it the democratic way, and it would sit a lot better with so many people. And especially, it's compromising media. They're apologizing for it. It's not good. It's not a good look on Canada. I'm sure there's going to be some organizations in the world that do stories on it and say this is not a way to win in a democratic country. Most Canadians, though, in this poll, do not support floor crossings. Only a small percentage of Canadians, 26%, thinks MPs should switch parties. Because all you have, the difference between a democracy and an authoritarian government, or the differences, the dictatorships in that, is the vote. That's all Canadians have, is the difference, is the vote. And if the vote's not respected, then it's not respect for democracy. I don't know how else to explain it. People can explain it away that we've convinced one person to represent the voices of, 50,000, 30,000, 20,000 just because they went in a back room and made a deal. That's not how democracy works.
But it's also just, these are quite highfalutin terms, aren't they? Quite abstract ideas that it's hard to put any sort of flesh on. It's hard to really define them and imagine them and all the rest of it. So it makes it harder to talk about them, which is why when we talk about Generoo, I just thought it was important. Well, actually, I said this about the other ones as well. It's important to think about these people as individuals and just think about the absolute basics of what is right and what is wrong, what it's your duty to do. And just even in your own personal life, can you imagine doing anything of this kind in your own life and then hiding away. As this MP, I'm getting the idea, I'm getting the impression that they're being told by the Liberal Party HQ, they're being told not to speak to the press. And they do this one very choreographed appearance with Mark Carney as chaperone. Same thing happened with the other ones. And they don't really answer any questions. One journalist asked a question of this woman yesterday, and she just didn't give an answer. It was like a total incoherent non-answer, just babble. And then she walked away. And that was when she walked into the applause. It's just not right, that, is it? I mean, it just fundamentally, forget democracy and all of these like abstract ideas. That it just isn't right on the level of just an ordinary human being. That's not right to do that and not speak directly to your constituents, not really explain yourself, really elaborate on what it is you're doing. And then fundamentally, as I've said for all of these, not giving the constituents the final say, which means resigning and standing in a by-election. That's, to me, that is just absolutely obvious. But that's not happening. So, like, forget all these grand ideas. Just be a sort of ordinary, decent person. Just do the minimum expected of a decent person.
And you would also think CBC is supposed to be the voice of Canadians. It takes your tax dollars, takes it from everybody. It doesn't take it from a select few. It takes tax dollars from everybody. And they're supposed to represent the voice of Canadians. Here's the voice of Canadians speaking right there, that the vast majority, like 3/4 of Canadians, do not support floor crossings. And where are the stories that talk about democracy and the vote? I'm going to show you a bunch of stories where it defends this liberal majority that they're trying to get by hook, by crook, by sneak, by whatever it is. And we're going to show you some of those right now. Aaron Gunn had put this out. He's a Conservative MP, so you can expect him to say this. But he says, if you want a majority government in Canada, you should earn it at the ballot box. And I'd say, like, again, Mark Carney loves to talk about hockey. This is basically cheating. You've gotten rid of the refs. You paid off the refs. You did everything you could. You paid off players on the other team to join your side to help you with the win. That's not how you win a Stanley Cup championship, because you're going to have an asterisk throughout history. History will note there will be an asterisk beside your Liberal majority that you cheated to get this championship. There's no way outside of it. But here's Tom McClare. He's a former NDP leader and now big CTV political analyst. He said, Lori's move to the Liberals brings rewards to the far north. Is that the headline, Tom? Is that the headline you want to run with?
Well, he won't have written this headline, to be fair. But still, I'm sure it's at least loosely.
Well, that's his quote, though. That's his quote there, Lori. And then Mark Carney, look at this. They sit down, basically just showing you how you sit down in a room and you give up all your principles and your ideals and basically the foundations of democracy. You just have a nice little chat there. And it's all good. And I guess for the apologists out there, this is what they wanted to see. They even got community noted. Like in this one here, we're not seeing it, but there's a community note on this that does not represent democracy by convincing people to cross over. And then CTV News again can't even get past itself. What's driving Carney's ability to court floor crossers? What about why does the Liberal Party not respect democracy and the vote of the people? And they have the data. They have the poll there that says 3/4 of Canadians don't support this. Yet CTV not doing those stories, are they?
There's a line there that I think we should extract from Mark Carney's statement where he talks about the defector. And he says that she's become known in many ways as the ultimate community MP. She's so good as an MP for the community that she decides to switch parties. She goes from pretty sort of strong left to centrist. I guess they would call themselves centrist, centre-left, something like that. Like loads of policy differences between the two parties. And then she doesn't consult the only people in this equation that matter, which is the constituents. But don't worry about it. She's the ultimate community MP who just doesn't care about her community or listen to her community or give them a chance to decide how they are represented.
Well, that's the headline today. Truths collide in Canada. Because the truth of the matter is The voters voted. And then the spin that they're spinning you, and the media, the corrupted, crippled media here in Canada, not doing, representing Canadian voices as well. We're not scared to tell the truth, at least for now anyway, until they pass a law here once they get their majority. Maybe that'll be the end of the really big show. But until then, we will bring you the truth. And here's a picture of all four. Someone put this, Mark Nixon put this together. What shocks me about the floor that so many people with zero integrity. It is shocking. It is shocking. And how the media was complicit in this role, and how the media played it up to, and will there be any more? Will there be any more?
They're excited, aren't they?
Where's the respect for the voter? Where is the respect for the voter? And this is after the two-term NDP MP Lori there spoke at a rally. She was a keynote speaker at that rally. And that was the same thing as Chris D'Entremont. Remember, he went to the Conservative Christmas party, took all the accolades and the handshakes, and then the next, I think it was 2 days later, he's like, yeah, not so much, eh?
Remember as well, I know it's hard to pay attention to these fringe parties, but remember who Lewis is. Remember what he stands for. We were talking earlier about the NDP generally being like pretty sort of hard left, strong left. Avi Lewis is far left. If you want to call it left, I mean, progressivism, whatever that thing is. He's an extremist progressive who wants to get rid of fossil fuels in their entirety. And one of the things I find most interesting about Avi Lewis is that he's very, very hostile to natural gas, which Tim Hodgson and Mark Carney tell us part of our future. That's how we're gonna return to being a wealthy country. So this is just one of many examples where this MP has just gone from apples to oranges. You know, she's really exchanged, because you could say, oh, Don Davies or something like that, or the NDP as it currently is constituted and led. That's one thing. But Avi Lewis, who's the favourite to win and who she backed, gave her support to, that compared to Mark Carney's Liberal Party, there's a big gap there. There's a lot of distance there.
There's a chasm.
So,
chasm there.
Yeah. So where is the consistency? You know, the kind of people you assume, don't you? The kind of people that get into politics have these really deeply held principles. People like Avi Lewis. To be fair to him, you know, it might sound like I'm speaking about him in a negative way, but I will be fair to Big Avi. He's exactly the kind of person that I think most people think of when they think of a politician. He really has these values, these principles that he is willing to go to the wall for them. Like in this gas thing, that's a perfect example. Something that most of the country thinks is mad, but he's going to stick to it because those are his principles. That's why he's in politics. All right, I understand that. But what about this defector and the others? But what about this defector right now that we're talking about? Are there no principles? Is there nothing deeply held? Or is it all just pure opportunism and it's whoever gives you the best offer? It's very sad, isn't it, at the end of the day? I mean, however you interpret this, it's very sad. Unless you are a kind of Liberal Party chauvinist and you don't care how you win as long as you win. I guess those people are happy.
Thanks to Tracy, she corrected me there. It was Michael Maw at the Christmas party, not Chris D'Entremont. But this at this rally here, or after that, what did the government say to you to get you to cross the floor? Asked the reporter, like any complicated issue. It just wasn't one thing, and that's from Lori there. And the New Democrat leader, Don Davies, said she should resign. He didn't have much to say when it was happening the other way. To us, the decision of voters, the ballot box, is a sacred trust. It is the only trust. If an MP wants to override a decision, we believe they must go back to the voters. That is respect for the voters. And it's there seems to be a lack of respect. And the reporter did ask here, this is to Carney, are you disrespecting the democratic process? Carney's answer? No answer.
Yeah,
no answer. Did not answer the question. And then the other media is just like, just forget about that. That should be like the scandal right there. Are you disrespecting the democratic process? Because that is the question. That is the question. And Francois Philippe Champagne goes all in, though. He's just like, one thing about him is he is definitely the Carney, Carnival Carney touter at the big tent there. He said defections represented the will of the people. No, it represented the will of that one person. People are rallying behind Prime Minister Carney. No, 50,000 people didn't stand behind Mark Carney there. In the Edmonton riding there with Matt Mud Jean-Roux, that's not the will of the people. Is it correct for a Democratic point of view to seek a majority by recruiting from other parties? And that's the reporter. Well, what you see is what I think represents the spirit we see in this country. No, they just say it, right?
The answer to that, I think, is quite obvious, isn't it? And it's 2 words. Prove it.
Yeah.
Prove what you say. Prove this represents the will of the people. We've invented a system. We have the technology. Prove it. Prove that that's true, that represents the will of the people of Nunavut. Go on, prove it. You can do it. She resigns. A by-election is called. You can prove it to all of us. Do it. But instead, no. You have Champagne just declaring that this represents the will of the people, which is, the more you think about it, the more you allow that to spin around in your head, the more sinister that becomes. I mean, who the hell is he to say what is or is not the will of the Canadian people? The Canadian people will tell you that. That's not for you to declare.
Here's the next picture here. This is tells you all you need to know. See how they console each other, because after they've traded their values and their integrity for what we don't know. Will we ever know? Somebody will maybe finally get those answers. But for right now, it's like a club. Yesterday when we showed you that, it was almost sickening to watch them clapping like seals and chanting her name for basically trampling on the democratic process here in Canada. Just have a by-election. Just if you're so confident, you should easily win a by-election. If you believe that Canada wants to give you a mandate, then like Ian said, prove it to the Canadians. Prove it to Canada.
I mean, it's not like it's hard. It's really, it's not that difficult to resign. Just do it.
Yeah, I was going to play. I don't think I would give her any time there. But here's Don Davies, though. Let's listen to what Don Davies has to say.
Talking about leaving the party. So what does it mean for the future of the party? You're in a leadership race, and sorry to point out.
And we had Starbase. That's people leaving for Starbase, I think. Are you ready?
Jack Layton t-shirt.
You're in a leadership race, and sorry to point it out, but there's an MP behind you that's talking about leaving the party. So where does that leave you?
Well, you know, I'm becoming increasingly concerned by the way that Mr. Carney is trying to stitch together a majority government in this country. Once again, to us, whether or not there's a majority government is fundamentally a decision of the Canadian people at the ballot box. And it should happen that way, not through backroom deals, cut behind closed doors in Ottawa.
I'm going to have to agree with Don Davies on that point. Don't agree with a lot of the things that Don Davies says, but this totally disrespects the will of the voter. I mean, it's easy to call by. You're already doing 3 by-elections. Just do the other 4. Respect Canada. Respect democracy.
At a time where democracy is under siege and imperiled, we keep hearing this. It's not just us saying this. You hear this more often from the Liberals, if anything, than us. Prove it. Prove that you believe in democracy. You know, what was it during the was it the 2020 election? Or during the Biden presidency, where they were talking about fortifying elections? Fortify our democracy, please. Like I'm pleading with you. Please do that, because in all seriousness, one of the many consequences of this is more erosion of Canadians' faith in democracy, and that is a catastrophically bad thing, and that will come back to bite not just these people but all of us on the behind. This is really really bad news. And when we say this about the media, that's another area, but you can't get, this is the purest form of democracy, of expression of democracy. This is the number 1 ingredient in a democracy, isn't it? the vote.
That's it.
And it's
That's really it.
yeah, and it's being withdrawn. They're not allowed to have it. The people aren't allowed to have it. Like, it might be true what Champagne says and what this MP, the defector, says as well. It might well be true that people in Nunavut want her to be a liberal. That might be true, but prove it. Don't just say it. Don't just do it and present it as a fait accompli. That's how things work in countries like Iran, in autocracies. That's not how it's supposed to work in a country like this. And if you want this country to remain democratic and free and liberal and all those things with a small L, then you actually have to do the work. It's not just automatic, you know. It's not just like an automatic deposit into your account of democracy points. You actually have to pay the price. But as I said yesterday, as I said with Jenneru and the others, they are too scared to do that. They're too afraid. And they've put their cowardice ahead of Canada's democratic institutions. And that's something I think that should make everybody from across the spectrum shed a little tear.
What it is doing is I've seen the activity heat up on these separatist movements, and King Charles expressed some concern about Alberta separatism in a meeting. And I've seen it heat up. I mean, like you said, people losing faith in democracy are losing faith in Canada. This is not a way to instill more faith in Canada. This is a way to erode more trust in Canada. This is a way to give fuel to the separatists, both in Quebec and in Alberta. This is basically fuel for the fire. It is not a way to, and it is so simple. Mark Carney could just he could say that I'm a man of honor and I do not want to win the Stanley Cup by cheating. I will call the other 4 by-elections because that's the way it is, and I will respect the will of the people. And the media should be doing that as well. They should respect the will of the people because that's what makes a democracy. I mean, I don't know how anybody could argue that. I'd go on David Cochrane and Rosemary Barton all day long to listen to their nonsense. There's no way they can defend it because that is the basic tenement to what democracy is the vote. There you go.
But then also you're talking about call the other by-elections. That's because we're having 3 by-elections, one of which is in Terrebonne, that riding where the election should never have stood for a minute, should have been immediately annulled. That should have been an immediate Liberal resignation because it was so buggered up. It was so obviously screwed up. And you know, Elections Canada coming out and saying, yeah, we totally screwed this up. We got the addresses wrong on the mail-in ballots. So for all we know, loads of totally legitimate, valid votes just weren't counted. But the Liberal won by 1 vote. And the Liberals aren't budging. They're not moving. They're going to wait for the Bloc, which came second, to file a suit in the courts and wait for that to happen. They're going to have to be forced, effectively dragged out of the room, because they don't have that sense of honor, that basic sense of principles and decency. They just refuse to do the right thing. So even then, I mean, one of those by-elections is completely involuntary, even though it's the right thing to do, obviously. You know, by any sort of ethical, moral metric that you want to measure it with.
I'm going to toss a sausage roll at the Desert Fox there. You need to switch that picture out, but I've been putting it in the document, but I think he fell asleep back there. Next one. Next. There we go. That's the picture. Should have been up for the last 5 minutes. There you go. And the NDP tried to put a bill through, and that was we talked about that bill the other day. The next slide. The Commons yesterday voted 295 to 22, rejecting the New Democrat bill to impose new restrictions on military trading with the United States, which was just utter nonsense, right? They wanted to restrict what we can sell to the Americans when we're trying to get a free trade deal. It's just like nobody has a common sense or thought process. But hey, 15 Liberal MPs defied cabinet in voting for the measure, though, and I'm sure they were told that it was okay because it didn't matter. You're just to appease your base and your. It was a bill that was ill-conceived, Anand told reporters. It did not take into account Canada's trading relationships and importance upholding our agreements with NATO allies. Really? No. Yeah. Thanks, Captain Obvious. But anyway, 15
It's all about
liberals.
Israel as well. Let's just
Yeah.
not beat around the bush. This is because a lot of these MPs, just look at the names of these MPs. Ahmed Hussein, Talib Noor Mohammed. These are people I would be willing to bet my life on it that they have constituents who are exceedingly hostile to the Jewish state for reasons unknown. Who will ever figure that out? And so they've thought, all right, well, I'll appease my constituents because I want to stay in power in this seat. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to give my support to this anti-Israel bill. One of the people that gave their support to this anti-Israel bill is the MP that's just defected to the Liberal Party, by the way. But it's all about Israel. And it's all about, we don't want to sell stuff to America that America then gives to Israel, sells to Israel. But like I said, when we were talking about one of the other supporters of this bill, there's nothing here about Pakistan. There's nothing here about loads of countries that Canada does business with that aren't particularly pleasant countries. But even in terms of countries that are approved for the export of military equipment, Saudi Arabia, I don't know if people are even aware of this, but Saudi Arabia is one of our main customers for weapons. Saudi Arabia. Which country is worse, do you think? Saudi Arabia or Israel? I would say most people who've got the lights on would say Saudi Arabia is probably a bit more oppressive, a bit nastier, you know, an absolute monarchy that beheads Kenyan nurses and people like that for things like witchcraft, literally beheads them in public. Yeah, I think that's probably the worst country. And you know, blows up children in Yemen and things like that without even trying. Like no attempt like Israel makes to at least not kill children. Nothing like that. They're not bothered about it. But they are one of our main customers for weapons. Can you see anywhere in this story? Have you heard anything from any of these MPs about the country of Saudi Arabia and how they receive our weapons? Obviously not. And it's my theory that that might have something to do with the fact that there aren't any Jews in Saudi Arabia. Now, that's just a theory.
And you know what? You can do a really bad job as a government contractor, and you know what you get? More money. The company that sold rifles with faulty stocks to Canadian military gets another $8.8 million to fix them. Because that's the way we do. That's the way they take care of your taxpayer money. Just to point it out there, the obvious. But this here, we talked about this a lot. Yes, we spent a lot of time on this. As Travis was the former CBC employee, basically calling out the CBC. CBC just kind of burying it. And apparently there's a blacklist of people of 49 names on it. The CBC yesterday would not release the internal guide dealing with the public figures banned from interviews. Travis said he saw the list, but they won't give out this blacklist of 45 names. Doesn't the CBC work for us? They take my money, your money, everybody's money. They won't give out the gem numbers. They won't give out this. Is this a Crown Corporation or is this CSIS? What is it? Is this a public broadcaster or is this the security department for the Liberals? What is it? Because the CEO should get fired tomorrow or today for not releasing this. It's ridiculous. The whole thing.
Part of his testimony, I think one of the best bits of his testimony, or whatever you want to call it, witness statement, is when he said, you know, we can't have a situation where the head of CBC is dragged into a committee and raked over the coals or whatever cliche he used, and then nothing happens. And she just goes right back to the office and everything's fine. And then they get a massive, actually, what really happened is they get a gigantic pay increase.
And this is from Travis here. A certain group of people in Ottawa was in control who was allowed on the program. Network bias was a matter of internal debate among CBC employees, and he named them as, you know, like Rosemary and Cochrane. This is an organization that takes money out of your pocket, food off your table, and does not represent the voices of Canada. You see the voices of Canada. 76% or 74% do not support floor crossings. Where are those stories on CBC? They should outnumber all the accolades and applause for Mark Carney forming a Liberal government. There aren't. They have a token Kate Harrison on there. They have a token conservative on there. Why don't they make it 50-50? Because you see the election is 50-50 basically. They don't represent the voices of Canada. Why don't you put Ian and I on there? Have us have a show on there if you want to show that you're fully representative of the voices of Canada. They're not.
Do you think we would beat their ratings if we did that?
I think we would kick their ass. And they are a propaganda machine and they need to be defunded. And I think a lot of people are really seeing them for who they are. They've exposed their soft underbelly, really, and all these things. The more light that is shone on the CBC and CTV and Global and CP, the more ugly it looks in that soft underbelly of just corruption. It's just, you know, I think Canadians are had enough of it. You can come here for the truth. And we even let you communicate CBC if you go on their streams. You don't get to talk. You don't get to do anything. You don't get to communicate. You don't get answers. You don't get anything. Because why? Because when you tell lies all the time, people get angry. Sleeping Giant says we're keeping them from the truth as well. I don't know what truth we're keeping you from, but hey, there you go.
said something about being like having his comments deleted or something, but that isn't us. We've
Not
said
us.
that so many times.
YouTube. That's the YouTube. YouTube, and don't forget,
9 times out of 10, that isn't us. I mean,
we silence some people that go like start doing F-bombs and attacking each other in there. But other than that, we don't do anything.
well, just people that make it so you can't have a conversation. I think that makes sense. That's like, you know, the basics, isn't it, really? But otherwise, no, we don't do that.
You can't comment on CBC stories at all. Like you can't say anything. Try phoning them. Try making a complaint. We tried to interview, because we were a subscriber to CP feed for how many years? I don't know, 10 years? We were a CP subscriber. Like we put out their news forever. And they just got so bad. Ian and I actually asked for an interview with the editor. And he communicated once, and it was just basically at the end of that was, nah, not interested.
Well, do you remember I sent him quite a long email where I explained how a number of his articles had violated his own. This was a news editor, I think, wasn't it? That we emailed had violated his own code of journalistic practice or whatever they call it. I mean, like every detail you could need. It was article and everything. It was all there. I mean, article of the code of conduct or whatever, and he just didn't even respond.
I'll say this to you.
It's actually kind of funny, really, but that's one of the many ways in which Canadian press is not really up to very much at all. Sadly, I mean, not only is its content pretty poor, but it's obviously got pretty unserious management as well.
In this show, we tried to do the news feed that we have, and we'll kind of comment on those stories. People are asking stories outside of that. You can become a member, and we do a members only video on Fridays, and you can ask questions there. We'll answer different questions, but you got to hit the join button for that. But in this one, we stick to the stories that are in the load for the most part. A little bit of an update on the Iran war. Here's a piece from Fox there on the new Iranian leader there that has put out this statement here.
Getting this in right now on Iranian state media, a presenter read a new statement from Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, and Reuters is reporting a few highlights from those remarks, saying that the supreme leader said in the statement, "We believe in friendship with neighbors and only target the bases, and we will inevitably continue." That is not true. We know that many Gulf countries have had their residential and civilian infrastructure attacked. Now, Iran's new supreme leader in this statement goes on to say all U.S. bases should immediately be closed in the region, and those bases will be attacked. He also says in the statement, again, that was presented on state media, he does not appear in the statement, that he calls on unity among the people of Iran and participation in Quds Day. Now, Quds is the Arabic word for Jerusalem, and this day normally falls on the last Friday of Ramadan. And so, if my math is correct here, that would be March 20th of this year, the last Friday of Ramadan, when traditionally we have seen Iranian proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah launch attacks and also large demonstrations in the region. And so this is certainly something to look out for in the days ahead. But again, this is the first statement that we are receiving from Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. He speaks about the attack.
Yeah, it was just a written statement. There was no video statement. So there was.
He's terrible. I would say he's Mojtaba Khamenei. He's only very slightly better with the media than Mark Carney at this point. He's got to up his game, you know? Needs to do more media appearances. But as I said, still a little bit better than Mark Carney, but that's not really good enough, is it?
Price of crude shot up again as a couple of oil tankers were attacked in the Strait of Hormuz there. So oil up again this morning. West Texas Intermediate up over $95 a barrel. Western Canadian Select, I mean, that's a delayed quota. It's showing around $75 a barrel, which is like a boom for Alberta. I mean, they need 75 Canadian to make it work in Alberta. That's according to Danielle Smith. But again, one of the points that we've been trying to make on this show for over a year now, energy is everything, and the liberal policies of the past 11 years have suppressed our natural resources and basically, Mark Carney's values, keep it in the ground, all this stuff. And they attended this G7 meeting to release strategic reserves that they take some pressure off the oil. And the Globe and Mail puts out this piece, Ottawa eyeing moves to boost production amid global oil supply shock, which is, boosting production is one thing. But, Tim Hodgson says that Canada will do its part to help IEA release of oil reserves. Well, Tim, if you go to the next slide there, Tim, Canada is the only G7 nation to not have any oil reserves. We don't have any. So what shall we release? The stuff from the Shell gas station, or maybe it's in people's tanks, like in their cars. Release that. Because we don't have any. We don't have any gold reserves. We don't have any strategic oil reserves. This is all mismanagement of this nation. This is all mismanagement of this nation. It's all weak leadership. But
it's okay. It's fine. Because Mark Carney said in very patronizing terms to Pierre Poilievre when he asked this question about oil reserves, he wagged his finger and he went, maximum hauteur, and said, you don't seem to realize that as an oil exporter, we don't need an oil reserve. Except all the world's biggest oil producers, including the United States, the world's biggest oil producer, do have oil reserves. Once again, Mark, see, this is the thing. Even if you're wrong, even if you know nothing, even if you're completely clueless, if you just adopt that hauteur, if you just get the attitude of hauteur and you look down on people, especially if those people are right and you're wrong, then it's fine. Nobody will press you on it. The Globe and Mail will write these fawning articles about it. It's fine. Just do it. You just have to learn how to be arrogant and dismissive.
Let's play it. Let's play it and show you the hauteur. And then we can practice it for ourselves.
See if I can get it down.
Let's play the clip of hauteur.
The G7 oil reserve works. If you're an importer, you have to have an oil reserve. If you're an exporter, which Canada is under this government, if you have record exports, which Canada is under this government, that is how you supply the world. I salute the work of the Minister of Natural Resource and the Minister of Finance, working with G7 counterparts, confirmed with my G7 leader counterparts today to release 400 million barrels from that strategic reserve that Canada.
To release 400 million barrels of oil from that strategic stockpile, how many of those are coming from Canada? Exactly 0. And the Prime Minister's excuse, the reason why we have no stockpiles, he says, is because we're a producer of oil. This is exactly the opposite of logic. The United States is a producer of oil. They have stockpiles. We have reserves, which the Prime Minister is successfully keeping in the ground. Just last week, we saw an $8 billion project canceled under his watch. We're importing gas from Australia. Why won't he get out of the way so we can produce our own energy?
Hauteur.
So the lesson I learned is there's a lot of this, isn't there? And also, you got to look at them like they're stupid though as well. It's like, so that's it. As you say something that's completely, obviously, transparently wrong, and as all of your little howler monkeys behind you hoot and applaud, But I mean, they're pretty important, aren't they? You do need that. You need that menagerie behind you. But yeah, just to fact check, Mr. Carney again. We already did it, but we'll do it again. And Poilievre did it, but I think he missed a trick there because he said the US is also a producer. The US, right? Two things to say there. The US is the world's largest producer of oil. Okay, that's pretty important. They're not just any old producer. They produce the most oil on the planet, and they have a very big oil reserve. Who'd have thunk it? But then Carney also said we export, we don't import. Ask people in Eastern Canada, where do they get their oil from, Mark? Oh yeah, they import it from the United States and Nigeria and
this place,
Saudi Arabia and countries like that.
Right there, Australia. We showed you that.
That's where they get their gas, yeah. But seriously, that was if you just swallow that as the Canadian media seems to have done, you know, the main media outlets. You've got to have a look in the mirror. Mark Carney has just basically shouted at you that you are stupid. You are a stupid, moronic fool. And you will just hear a lie. Very easy to check this. This is not difficult to look. You just look at countries by strategic oil reserves. Just have a look. And then look at countries by oil production. Just do that. But if you swallow this, you degrade yourself. You demean yourself. And I suppose, you know, politician lying, okay, that's not really a story. The interesting thing for me is, why has the press just swallowed this once again? You know, have some self-respect.
Canada's the only, burn this into your head, Canada's the only G7 nation that does not maintain a strategic reserve of oil. The only one in the G7. The only one in the G7. Just burn that in your head. And yeah, the prop, somebody said they love the globe. I mean, we invested a lot in this globe. CBC, in their $1.6 billion, can't afford a globe. Ours is, you know, like, we have the globe. There's Australia. And then you got to come all the way around. I don't even know. Yeah, all the way. That's a ways to go. South America. And then up. We got to, because I got to figure out how this is backwards here then.
It's hard, isn't it? It's really hard.
I don't think I'd be good at sailing a ship. There it is. There it is. You get the oil then, or the LNG to somewhere over there. And I think if the CBC and the rest of the media outlets invested in the globe, and then they would also realize that Canada sits on the globe on top of the United States of America, the largest economy in the world, the largest consumer in the world, the largest military in the world, and the dollar that's traded in the world. They don't price goods in the world in Canadian dollars. They price them in USD. All those factors are ignored by the CBC when they do those TDS stories. And again, they ignore the globe. We paid a lot for this prop. I mean, this is our budget for the year, blown. And we do thank, we had another member join, so that's great. We appreciate all the members here. And here's a map here to show you, like, is there any way we can make that map a little bigger just for this? Is there, can we blow that up? Do we have the technology? Do we have the technology, Captain? Enhance. We don't have, like, again, we're shy about $1.6 billion. They don't like, I wish I was, you know, like if we were David Cochrane, we would yell at somebody and they would come and do something for us, right? And then pull out a sausage roll or something and just munch on it. Look, that's not enhanced yet.
Oh, no. We really need to enhance.
Enhance. Feel like a CSI show. Enhance. Yeah, I don't know if we have the technology. That wasn't any bigger than it is right there. So that's it. We don't have the tech. We're going to work on that. That'll be after, you know, the globe. Once we settle. Oh, look at that. There you go.
That's a bit better.
That's better. Northern Gateway Pipeline. That's the top one there in the black box. Rejected. Mark Carney testified in committee. Don't need that. Don't want it. Don't need it. Energy East, canceled. Don't need that. All of our oil and gas goes to the south and then comes back up on line 9 there. And
well, it's also just imported from
the U.S. as
the
well.
Gulf of Mexico, from Texas. We get that sweet, sweet Texas oil.
Yeah. So there you go. Our
But
oil
it is
reserve.
absolutely insane when you look at that Enbridge main line, isn't it? I mean, come on. Whoever thought that was a great idea? Come and explain yourself.
I guess when Tim Hodgson says that Canada's going to release our oil reserves, they were probably saying, like, can we phone the United States and get them to release some of Canadian oil that was shipped that way and is sitting in American reserves? Maybe that's what they're doing. Clownish. And this is the other one that Mark Carney and Liberals are trying to sell, and this is because Brookfield's big into carbon credits. This is the thing that Mark Carney was working on with the GFANZ, and also the Net Zero Alliance. This was a big thing. Put up the Daniel Smith slide there. The Alberta carbon market rally fades. Because that's what he was saying. We got to financialize these carbon credits and create an industry out of it. And it's basically like NFTs. You're selling these monkey pictures. You're selling nothing to people. And that thing is, because these carbon credits went, they were around $17 before the rally began in late November when the price was around $17. After Carney and Daniel Smith signed a deal, they shot up, and now they're backing off here. Now the credits have fallen to about $30 after surging to 40 in January. So this is the banking industry, which Mark Carney is loading up Canadian government with, his former bankers. This is financializing. It's kind of like what they did with securitizing mortgages in the US before that whole thing blew up. Remember that? The 2008 mortgage crisis in the United States when the banks imploded? This is a similar type thing. You're creating financial instruments out of nothing. This is nothing. Carbon credits, nothing.
But it's nothing, yeah. But in reality, it's an extremely awkward bit of compliance, isn't it? And regulation and taxation, in effect.
Taxation scheme.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed. But this is what, the massive carbon capture and sequestration malarkey, that the big plan to build that pathways thing, that's predicated on this being a desirable commodity, this credit or these credits. But because I guess the market isn't so sure that it's actually going to pan out the way that they said it would, so price falls because people are losing faith in it. I mean, the obvious question, if you know anything about economics, I mean, I know a little bit about economics. I'm obviously not the grand wizard of economics like Mark Carney, so I bow to his superior knowledge and wisdom. But if you know anything about economics, adding all these layers on top of anything and creating like artificial markets, artificial blubber around the skeleton of your actual real market, just makes them immensely inefficient. And worse than that, it makes them uncompetitive. But we're told that this is how we're going to be competitive. The exact opposite of what, a knowledge of basic economics would tell you. So again, we're being told not to believe our instincts and, traditional knowledge or whatever. Well, don't believe that. Don't believe what you think you know about economics. Believe the opposite, because the grand wizard told you that.
We showed you about 2 weeks ago now that the European carbon credits are also falling because nobody's buying into this climate change anymore. Carney's and the Liberals are the only ones still selling this stuff. This is basically a taxation scheme. There was a story came out from the business leaders of Canada saying that Canada can't afford more tax. It will not make us competitive by taxing our energy. Energy is so important. Cheap, reliable energy is everything. And this is just a taxation scheme. It's a bloody taxation scheme that makes bankers rich. It does not help the consumers. It does not help the consumers. That is the obvious. Somebody wrote in here, and it went by so fast, which is great. The unburden thing, and it reminded me of Kamala Harris. And just like, it's like if she was campaigning for carbon credits, she'd say, we'd be unburdened by the unburdens of the unburdening of the unburdens. How does she say it? I don't know. Just like, we've been unburdened by the burdens of the burdens.
Something of the past? What is it? I can't remember. It's so funny. It was like nonsense poetry. I can't remember the name of that guy in Scotland that used to, hundreds of years ago, was famous for writing his nonsense poetry. That's what it was like. That's what it reminded me of.
Just sum it up to this. Only a banker would create a financial instrument around carbon credits and make it so complicated that the average person can't understand it, and tell the Canadian public that it's going to make us competitive in the world environment, because it won't. It'll do the exact opposite, and tell the Canadian public that the world is going to demand it. No, they're not. The United States of America isn't doing it, and they sold gas to Japan, South Korea, and Germany, the ones that came begging for us to buy it. And Mark Carney still selling these financial instruments because he built his whole thing. Go read Net Zero Alliance. Go read the stuff on defense. He chaired these committees. He created these committees, all based on financializing carbon credits. It's his baby. It's his baby. And Brookfield bought in huge. Brookfield at risk right now as this falls apart in the world. And we talked about this a little yesterday, IRGC. You know, they can't get the number. This is Melissa Landsman here from Gary. You can't get any numbers out of Gary anyway. I don't know if we're going to play the clip because it's the same stuff. Like saying 700. Now they're saying it's not 700. Why don't you just tell us what the number is? And that's what Melissa says in this clip here. Tell us the number. Do you want to listen to the clip, or, I mean, it's just the same stuff. Let's listen.
Gary, we should also say Gary not only said that that isn't the right number, but he said it's fake news. Yeah. He really condemned the irresponsible people who are spreading that number around.
Let's hear it then. Let's hear the
public safety minister today on the 700 IRGC members number. He's disputing the number, though he's not quite telling us what the government's number is. He does say that 700 is a larger number that includes entities and family members of IRGC members. What do you make of that?
Look, we have heard for a long time in this country from human rights groups in the Iranian community, which was then put forward and verified by different media. If the number isn't 700, then the minister ought to tell Canadians, and we need to know, all Canadians need to know what that number is. We know that the minister was talking about 28 inadmissible. We also know that there's 239 people who have had their visas revoked, making them inadmissible. And we know the most important number is that they have expelled only one. So we're calling on the minister to actually get to work. That number of 239 was actually from his own department, the department that he controls, and he's failed to expel Iranian regime activists from this country. We're calling on him to table a plan within a week in this House of Commons to tell Canadians how he's going to get rid of the terrorists that are terrifying our communities.
Can I add to that as well, too? As it relates to immigration proceedings, what we've seen happen over the last several years is that people who have been non-citizens who have been involved in very senior activities for the Iranian regime. So, for example, there was a case where I believe there was a man who was involved in running a Iranian regime-sponsored propaganda newspaper. He also held senior positions within the Friday Imams Council, and also held a senior position in the Supreme Leader's UAE office. He argued that he shouldn't be removed from Canada because he wasn't enough of a senior official. This is why at our immigration committee and in our plan today, we're saying that the law needs to be reviewed so that immigration processes reflect the spirit of the law, right? I would argue that that person is a senior official. So part of my question would be, on top of what my colleague said, well, if the number's not 700, that's been verified in media reports, then what is it? But also, what are you constituting as what is the minister constituting as a senior official? So this is the question that you ask is directly related to some of the elements of our plan as well, too. And it's that lack of clarity that is, I think, contributing to a sense of fear and a sense of concern in many communities in Canada, certainly in the Persian community. We're hearing that from colleagues who have significant Persian communities within their ridings. And this is a concrete step that I think that at this juncture, the government has to take to clarify. And I want to be really clear about something.
That's good. I mean, in committee, or in the House of Commons, Gary said they deported one.
Gaz. But he also, just the attitude on the chap was amazing. It's just kind of a shame we don't have the clip, because he was really condemning people for
asking.
speculating on the number. But it was amazing as that reporter who asked that question sort of, you could tell that reporter was not happy with Gaza there, because he said it's not that number, it's not 700, but he also wouldn't tell us the actual number. I mean, what the hell kind of government is this? So he comes out and says, no, it's not 700 and something. But then the reporter says, all right, so how many is it? I'm not going to tell you. Now that's government. That's a nice, open, liberal government. And I meant that with a small L, but really, I mean, it's unique to the big L, isn't it?
And I don't have much on this. I know they were just going live with this when I put this in. The Conservative, this is Sandra Kobina there. They're discussing stand on guard proposal to expand self-defense rights. I mean, this is their proposal. Did you have anything on that, or we'll probably talk about it tomorrow?
This is I believe this is about, defending yourself in your home, isn't it? Yeah, that is what it's about. Yeah. I mean, we probably shouldn't talk about it because we didn't watch this, but you can imagine what it is, pretty much.
We'll talk about it more. Mark Carney's worked really hard. He's got his majority basically sewed up there, and he's off on a vacay. Remember, Buy Canadian. That's low hanging fruit too, and it's almost. But he's going to vacation in Europe, of course, not in what you call it, Tofino. At least Trudeau stayed in Tofino, but he's going to Rome. There you go, taking a break. I mean, what they work 73 days.
And all he ever does is complain. Like, I don't know if other people have been following that repeated complaint from him, but it's like, oh, you just work all the time. Do you? Doesn't look like it from here. It really doesn't look like it. But yeah, he's going to have this vacation in London and Rome. He's not beating the accusations that he's like almost like weirdly obsessed with England, is he? It's just, he's constantly there to the point where it's very difficult to understand why. It's just this endless, he's born back ceaselessly into the United Kingdom, to paraphrase F. Scott Fitzgerald.
What draws him there? We don't know. What draws him there? We don't know. But we
Like
talked
a moth to a light. And then he's also going to Rome. Bet he meets the Pope. He's going to meet the King. That's the word on the street, is that he's going to chat to Kingy. And I would reckon Popey will also be one of his, one of the people he meets.
As a reminder, Jasmin Laine joins us at 10:30 here on the show. We talk about regulation. We had the food professor on, I think it's 2 weeks now. And we talk about this all the time. One of the biggest problems in Canada is the regulations, the bureaucracy, and the layers upon layers and the layers. And there's this piece put out by the CFIB here. Well, the article was by that, but the research by the CFIB is look at the chart here, the next one, the Canadian Industrial Federal Regulations over the years since 2006 to 2021. Look at the amount of regulations that Canada continues to heap on heap. Like, they could have repealed C-48 and C-69, but no, they put C-5 on top of it, and it just gave them extraordinary powers. And it's just layers upon regulations. And if you look at this next chart here, the total regulatory requirements by jurisdiction, the federal jurisdiction, the Quebec, of course. Quebec loves regulations. Ontario and BC, of course. BC would be right up there. And then the ones on the bottom would be, Alberta, obviously more conservatively run for a long time, would have less regulations. Newfoundlanders, basically, if it can make money, let's get her done. Newfie's getting that Bay du Nord going there. So good job on
Finally.
that.
A while.
Yeah, taking a while for sure. But
the way I look at this is, I said this before, and I think it's a very good way to look at it, is these regulations, to a certain extent, you have to look at these as luxuries.
Yeah.
So if your economy is booming and everything's gone swimmingly, everything's gone really well, then you can afford to worry about the little things. And you can worry about trying to get it absolutely perfect, whatever it is. But if things are bad, if the economy is stagnant or declining, then it becomes harder to justify having these luxuries, Just like if in your personal life, everything's financially gone down the drain. kind of hard to justify that sort of random weekend in Las Vegas or something like that, isn't it? It's kind of, the first thing to cut is the luxuries. But a lot of people look at these as just a good in themselves. Like that, almost they look at this as if this will make us richer, as if this will contribute to economic growth, even though, I mean, it was already obvious, but here's the evidence.
Chase
It has
business
the
way.
opposite effect. It shrinks
Chase,
the economy.
Chase's business way. We talked about the food professor's example of one food manufacturer that 2 years trying to get a food approved here in Canada, and he went down to the U.S. and then approved. And I hope I get these numbers right: 40 states in 4 weeks, or is it 20 states in 4 weeks, something like that. But I mean, he had approvals in 4 weeks. But this cumulative burden is significant. The CFIB's latest estimate puts the total regulatory cost for small business across all government levels at $51 billion in 2024 alone. That's just the cost of the regulations the small business has to deal with. And I know that as a small business owner, like the amount of regulations and red tape you have to deal with. And that's a 13.5% jump since 2020. And then 17.9 billion represents pure red tape. And if you're a business owner on here, you'll understand this. All the red tape, all the different things you have to do all the time. And businesses are burning through 768 million hours annually on regulatory paperwork, the equivalent of roughly 394,000 full-time jobs. And you wonder why we're not productive, because that doesn't add to productivity. For the average business owner, that means losing 32 hours per year, 32 working days per year on red tape alone.
And Mark Carney, when he was in India recently, he was laughing about this. He was saying, I know we've got this reputation for red tape, and I'm trying to fix it. Are you? Are you really? I mean, I'm pleading with him for evidence. I need evidence of this. All I've seen is passed a law that temporarily suspends all of this regulatory burden for selected companies, rather than just getting rid of the whole, collection from the get-go.
In grand liberal fashion, what they should do and what they might do is similar to the housing department, is they should create an office of bureaucracy for limiting bureaucracy. So you have another bureaucratic institution, a crown corporation, that will regulate the bureaucrats. Wouldn't that be great? Pay that person $600,000 to regulate the regulators.
That should be a Latin phrase, shouldn't it? Who regulates the regulators?
Yeah. We have power shortage here at the really big show headquarters here. So hopefully we can avert the power crisis, but we're going to keep plugging away here.
Adrian Dix has said no. It's a luxury that BC can no longer afford. So you're cut.
They just knocked over our background there, so there's chaos going on behind the scene. Then we'll fix our background shot here in a bit as well. The president of the nation's leading LGBTQ rights group yesterday abruptly resigned on complaints the community has failed to confront anti-Semitism. Federal agencies would not say whether the funding for Egali Canada would be reconsidered. I do not think the organization is anti-Semitic, said Jacqueline Lewis, Egali's ex-president. I believe in rallies support of Gaza and Palestinians, which have morphed into pro-Hamas rallies, are anti-Semitic. Egali last year received $77,000 in federal contracts. Payments included $38,000 from the Department of Natural Resources for training on fostering inclusive and safe workplace, $39,000 in travel to attend a G7 on gay rights. The group also received an additional $2 million in grants from federal agencies. Departments that awarded the largest subsidies: gender equality, health, heritage, and veteran affairs. Yesterday did not comment on whether funding for Egali would be reviewed following the president's resignation. Organizations and individuals demonstrating hateful and racist behavior, whether anti-Semitic, anti-Francophone, anti-Black, anti-Indigenous, or against any other racial or religious group, should not be supported through government funding. Applicants are now asked to certify in writing they will not undermine the anti-racism strategy. I mean, this is not surprising.
Many such cases. I mean, this is one of the main fault lines, though, isn't it? In the the very, very peculiar phenomenon of the Progressive Alliance, which is full of people that despise each other. Sometimes we get to see it as obviously as this.
Well, honk honk, the Chinese cars are on their way. Cabinet yesterday formally repealed its 100% tariff on Chinese battery electric vehicles as promised by the Prime Minister on his January 15th trip to Beijing. If you're an auto industry worker, I don't know if you're going to have a sleepless night. The industry department claimed Chinese manufacturers would create new auto manufacturing and jobs in Canada, provided no details. Of course not. The Japanese automakers are not going to like this, and the American automakers are not going to like it. The surtax became a source of concern for China and an important irritant in the bilateral trade relationship. The tariff was repealed retroactive to March 1. They say, the analysis statement says that Chinese automakers were going to create jobs in Canada. If they're shipping us cars, what jobs are being created? I'm just curious. 49,000 cars coming out. What jobs? Salesman jobs? What kind of jobs?
Maybe jobs for Chinese workers?
I have no idea
What
what
they've
kind
done in other countries, by the way. That's not just a flippant remark. They often send their staff to work the factories that they built. So
Carney announced his reversal in the auto tariffs in a speech to Canada-China Business Council in Beijing. China's strengths, for example, in EVs are formidable. They are undeniable. They are the most affordable and energy-efficient, innovative vehicles in the world. Again, the best EV made in the world, and the only one that's profitable in the world, is Tesla. I guess he's learning from Joe Biden. Ignore Tesla and just pump up the tires for other ones that aren't the same.
that's just, again, though, the things Mark Carney says, I really hope that he writes his memoirs and expresses some shame, some contrition about these comments. To talk about Chinese EVs or China's strengths there, and he says, these are the most affordable vehicles in the world. I'll read the rest. These are the most affordable and energy efficient and innovative vehicles in the world. Okay, affordable. Why are they affordable? Has it got something to do with slave labor, pressed labor, underpaid labor, manipulated currency, all of that good stuff? Does it have anything, like massive government subsidies? Anything to do with that, Mark? You're the economic guru. I'm sure you would know better than me. Energy efficient. What do they make it with? What do they fuel the plants with in China? Oh yeah, coal. Is that energy efficient? Again, Mark Carney's the economic genius here, not me. So he obviously knows better than that. And then he says, and the most innovative. Is this the country that steals intellectual copyright from everyone on the planet and every company in the planet rather than develop their own technology? Oh yeah, it is, isn't it? That is China, isn't it? But as I say, Mark Carney is the genius here. We are all just stupid peasants that sit at his knee to learn, and he teaches us. So thank you. Thank you for teaching me that, Mark Carney.
Again, as a reminder, Japan, Toyota, and Honda manufacture 70% of the cars here in Canada and ship about, of those 70%, they ship 80 to 92% of those to the United States of America. And the Japanese ambassador said Kuzma is critical because they have no place else to sell the cars other than to the United States of America. This is not going to sit well with the Japanese automakers. It's not going to sit well with the American automakers. So again, if you're one of the 500,000 relying on your job, you have to wonder why the Liberal government seems so reluctant to get a deal with Kuzma. Why do we seem to be freezing there? Something going on? And then Canada's exports fell in January. The lowest level since that's automobile exports. Parts fell. The lowest level since September of 2021. And just the overall exports, I had it up here. I was watching it this morning. Exports in Canada here fell. Canada exports fell 4.7%. Imports also fell 1.1%. The Canadian economy is slowing, like grinding. But according to some of these liberals, it's just amazing. Just the data doesn't support it, though. The data does not support the touts. Odd.
And exports, like if you read the rest of that Statistics Canada data about exports generally are down, and then the reason for it, because there was the previous data release was like looking great for the proportion of exports that went to countries other than the United States. So people were saying like, you know, get in, we're doing it, we're finally doing it. But it's not quite the same with this release. And the reason is because less gold bullion was sent to the United Kingdom. That was what distorted it completely and made it look like we had, you know, we'd expanded to new markets. Really, we're just selling gold to the English, les Anglais.
The other stat that we didn't cover here today is that they're going to start touting. You're going to hear it in the next few days that there's been like investment into Canada here, but the investment is basically companies being acquired, mergers and acquisitions that's driving that. So they won't tell you that part. But here's Francois Philippe Champagne talking about we're making banking more affordable for Canadians. We got to put him on because we need a fool of the day. And Francois put up his hand. We don't have nothing from Jolie today. So Francois, ready to go? What do you mean there's no link? Oh, there's no link for poor Francois.
Where are you, Frankie?
Can you see if you can find it? You can just find it on his thing there. Because, you know, everybody needs a little Francois in their life. But anyway, he's talking about banking. The banks in Canada, the 6 banks in Canada, the big ones, are the top 10 in the top 10 in Canada. A parasitic organization, banks. They're in the top 10. You know what? Well, part of that reason is because the spreads. What they get the money from the Bank of Canada and lend it to you at a higher spread. So instead of having more competition in Canada, the banks are making out like bandits. We got Francois. He's ready to go now.
Même s'il nous manque 5 $ pour payer une facture ou on aurait un chèque, on peut se voir...
Until we go to Quebec. We're going to do a Quebec show, a Quebecois show.
Oh, you've got the French one. This is the English one here.
Yeah. Hey, let's do it. We are low tech.
Even if someone is just $5 short when paying a bill or covering a check, they can be hit with a non-sufficient fund fee as high as $50. That is money that could go to groceries, that could go to essentials, or that could be just money you want for savings. And this is not rare. 1 in 3 Canadians is affected by these fees. That's why we're taking action. Starting tomorrow, non-sufficient fees will be capped at $10.
Enough. I can't do it anymore. So again, Francois, if you just listen to what you're saying, 1 in 3 Canadians affected by NSF fees. That's not a stat that I'd be proud of if you're running the government for the past 11 years. You should be ashamed of that stat. That's you. That's on you. That's on you, Francois. That's on you.
Also, why is he wobbling about the Parliament building there? Like in each cut there, he'd moved quite far away from where he was. Like, what's he wasting time for? Just like we have fixed that for you. Try to sell a car.
So I'll tell you how to fix it for you better. Leave the big banks. Leave them and go to Wealthsimple. If you go to reallybigshow.ca, there's a link there and you get $25 if you open an account. No transactional fees. And you can open trading accounts there as well. No transactional fees. Wealthsimple, it's a great app. You can buy gold, you can buy Bitcoin, and you can put in FHSA, TFSA, RRSP, checking account, savings account, all those different things. And it's a great app. I try to get as many young people on it as possible because instead of buying a $10 sugar coffee, you can buy $10 worth of stock and you won't have to be beholding to this nonsense here. 1 in 3 Canadians paying NSF fees. That's on you, Francois Philippe Champagne. Record lineups at food banks. On you, Francois Philippe Champagne. On you. And they just say it and they don't even recognize what they're saying. But we got a list here of Canada's big deals. So 82 Canadians crack Forbes 2026 World's Billionaires. 82 of them, hey? Can you guess?
Green Party leader of the Green Party in BC will be very unhappy about this. She's going to put it on her wall, isn't she? Like pictures of them, so she can throw darts at them.
I didn't know that CZ was a Canadian. That's the Binance Holdings. I remember a lot of stuff. He got in a little hot water there with Sam Bankman-Fried. Is Sam still in jail, or has Sam disappeared into a island somewhere?
I think he is. Yeah.
He's supposed to be in jail. I'm just wondering, is he in jail? Sam Bankman-Fried, you don't hear about him anymore. But Anyway, CZ Chanpeng Zhao is the top guy, the 17th richest person in the world, with all on crypto stuff, $110 billion. Stuart Hogener is a former general counsel of cryptocurrency, another crypto guy, making the money on the crypto. Joseph C. Alibaba, another Canadian though. Jimmy Pattison, Jimmy's getting old, long in the tooth, eh? Jimmy owns like all the Save-On Foods here, tons of car dealerships, and including that warehouse in the United States that Emily Lowen there went after him and got him to reverse that decision. He's worth about $12 billion. He puts him fourth among Canadians. He owns 50% of Canfor as well. Sherry Bridson, Thomson Reuters Group. Toby Lutke, Shopify. We've played some stuff from Toby in the past with Shopify CEO. David Sheraton, Stanford University's amassed his fortune from Google. Thanks to, listen to this, he invested $100,000 in Google in early days. With that, he's a big deal. 353rd richest person in the world just on that Google investment. There's a lot of guys that did that in Tesla, including Chamath and stuff like that too. Alain Bouchard, operator of 17,000. That's the Couche-Tard chains, gas stations. Lin Tang, Peter Gilligan, and then here's some other notables. Well, then that'll be enough for us there. Edmonton Oilers, Dale Katz, Arthropic co-founder Chris Olaf, and of course, our own British Columbian Lululemon athletic founder Chip, who's been active in the media recently, trying to get a new board there. So there you go.
The BC ones that are the most famous BC ones are just figures of hatred, aren't they? For a lot of like the Green Party, for example, but a lot of people on the left, like old Chip there, Chip and Jimmy.
They're
Like the two of them, absolutely loathed by the people who want to spend their tax money.
I had a phone call with, I can't remember the guy's name now, the guy that said his desk was right next to Jimmy's. And he said, I can yell at Jimmy. I'm just like, okay, so yeah, thanks. You're bragging or we're complaining? I'm not sure what you're trying to tell me here.
Maybe he's talking about, maybe it's an insult saying his hearing isn't all what it was.
But he told me that several times in the phone call that I had with him. And I'm just like, okay, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. Your desk is right next to Jimmy's. I live on the same planet as many other people on this planet, including Emily Lowe.
You said you're next to Jimmy. I am Jimmy.
I am the Jimmy. I am the Jimmy. This one here, Andrew Lawton tries to get the bill changed from Combating Hate Act to Combating Freedom of Expression Act. What are the chances that that got approved? But let's listen anyway.
Shall the short title
to Standing Order 116-2A. I seek unanimous consent to rename the bill the Combating Freedom of Expression Act.
Yes. No amendments. Thank you.
Second that.
Shall the short title carry?
Yes.
As amended. Shall the short title carry, Mr. Clerk?
Yes. Votes on the short title. Madame Natenzio.
Yes.
Mr. Householder.
Yes.
Madame Dillon. Yes. Mr. Chang. Mr. Brock.
I kind of prefer Mr. Lawton's short title, so I guess the answer would be no.
Mr. Baber.
No.
Mr. Gill.
No.
Mr. Lawton.
No.
Mr. Fortin.
Oui. Thank you. Carried. Shall the
There you go. That's good. No.
No.
No. À la bout.
You've got to say it from the back of your throat.
You gotta say it.
That's like maximum contempt.
You got to say it with hauteur. Jasmin Laine going to join
Exactly.
in 9 minutes. The countdown starts. Starlink. Starlink, I just want to show you how good Starlink is getting here. This is a PR piece from them. This is their speed and latency. You want less latency, you want more speed. And it looks like that chart goes the right way. I have Starlink at home last couple of years. So when they come, remember they were talking about they need to regulate the internet access in your home? And a lot of people are probably scrambling just like, so how do I get Starlink again? Show me the carbon. There's somebody says as a liberal, is it rigged outcome trying to be Ian today, like Mr. Sarcasm? Because this seems to be. I think he's may have banged his head against the wall a bit too much, and he's a liberal. I'm yelling at the top of my lungs from the. He said he's crossed over from the movie. Jerry goes, "Show me the carbon."
It's in the ground. We buried it. Honest.
Ford should apologize to Elon. Yeah, everybody should. Yeah, again, the EVs. Most of those Chinese EVs that are likely going to be sold in Canada are going to be Teslas that are manufactured in Shanghai. So I don't know how many. So it'll be a race to see who can get the more cars here, because Chinese don't have a dealership set up or anything. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So, but we've already seen it. We've seen it. And Ian and I have looked on the Tesla website right now. You can buy the Model Y now. The rear-wheel drive one is down to $49,900, which is just under the $50,000 threshold. That's a la Elon Musk, just $10 or $10 underneath, right? Just under the wire.
Or indeed, the grant writers in the federal government who also do that for some reason, do the 999 thing.
Anyway, that's our story. Look, like we're ready for Jasmin Laine. Like that's it. Like we're short a show today because we were getting ready for Jasmin Laine. If you have any questions for Jasmin when she joins us, you can start chucking them in here.
Well, I think we kind of under discussed the thing with the king. If we want to go back to that,
do that. Let's do this.
This is quite extraordinary, and this has got a lot of people rubbed up the wrong way, just as you would expect. I mean, for so many reasons, there's so many problems with this. The king is not supposed to talk about things like that. He's not supposed, because he's come out and said that he's concerned and that he's shocked even, apparently. But it's been relayed by other people about the prospect of Alberta separatism and what it might mean for the treaties that were signed with the Crown. I mean, so there's one thing. There's no way he should be saying that kind of thing anyway. He's supposed to be neutral on these matters. He's not supposed to get himself involved in politics at all. That's like rule number one for the monarchy. But then the other thing is these chiefs, these are the ones who've said this. They've relayed the information from the conversations. You're really not supposed to do that either. You're not supposed to have a private conversation with the king and then tell the press, oh yeah, he said this and that and the other. You're not meant to do that, obviously. That's really, really bad form. So everybody's screwed up here, I think. And ultimately, it's, this is what the monarchy obsesses about, whether it's its popularity is being maintained, because it's a question of survival. So they'll be very unhappy about this, because I think a lot of people in Alberta, a lot of people in Canada will just be saying, like, what does this have to do with you? Like, shut your mouth. Leave it alone.
Yeah, I mean, media. I mean, one of the reasons we're going to have a Jasmin Laine on is she was formerly in media as well, and she runs a successful YouTube channel now. And she spoke at the Conservative Leadership Convention there in Calgary just recently as well. So just getting her take on what's going on in media, as we see media kind of like expose itself, and that's the fight Ian and I have had for 2.5 years on the Online News Act, which has crippled our media outlet. This is an accredited media outlet that has reporters, and we're running several websites, Kelowna now, Penticton now, Kamloops now, and a few other ones that we've had to kind of like cut back on because of Online News Act. And that's the kind of like the birth of the Really Big Show, because we see an opportunity here where people aren't in the national scope aren't providing real truth to Canadians, and if they don't want to do it, we might as well step up and do it.
Even though it upsets the Liberals. But the only reason really that we're doing it anyway is because doing it the old-fashioned way gets you nothing. The government just ignores you. You won't get the interviews, so you just sort of die on the vine anyway, because you don't have any information, you don't have anything to tell. And you're playing by the rules. You're doing everything right, as people in the chat are saying, like Peter Pan fighting Captain Hook. You promise that you won't fly, and you don't fly. and you just don't get anything for it. Like it doesn't really work because they're not holding up their side of the bargain because they don't make themselves available. You know,
No.
you can't actually. How are you supposed to hold them to account if they won't even speak to you? You know.
Yeah,
So, they've created this. They've created this problem for themselves.
Yeah, they've created us, and they've rigged the game. They've rigged the game so badly that it's becoming so apparent out there how badly rigged it is. And the media is really showing how bad it is, how they've compromised themselves. Like CBC is a shell of its former self, an absolute shell of its former self from what it used to be. I mean, I used to think CBC was great. And you would have thought it needs to be protected. Maybe you can protect the CBC that does some of the shows, but the news organization needs to fend for itself. And then maybe then they'll have to answer to Canadians on a regular basis.
Yeah. That would be the most obvious thing, wouldn't it? To protect the the people that put out the comedy shows and the dramas and things like that.
Yeah.
But don't wall off and protect. I mean, it's more than wall off and protect. And don't like boost and privilege the news side of things. You know, they completely dominate news in Canada. They hire it's close to the majority, if not the majority, of all journalists in this country. They shouldn't be employed by the state. I mean, obviously, do you have to even say that? Like that's an absolutely obvious thing to say. I would have thought.
You would think so. And like I said, over the past little while, especially on energy, the climate agenda was not just run by the Liberal government. It was run by the media outlets here in Canada. I mean, they ran story after story after story and didn't show the other side of it, how energy is prosperity and how many people are actually standing in food bank lineups and that, and how it's actually hurting the prosperity of Canada. The liberal media machine was actually part of it that was convincing people not to have children and all kinds of things, that there's existential crisis here. And it's proven to be not true. And where's the apologies for it? Just more silence, more silence. I mean, they should act in the best interest of the Canadian voices. If they're going to take tax dollars, they should act in the interest of all Canadians, not just their own, the few. I mean, if you look at most of the policies over the past 11 years, policies that benefit the few at the expense of the many. Somebody saying we should talk to who? Chris Joseph? Did I see that across the screen there?
Chris? Oh,
yeah, he's a former, I remember him. He was a defenseman for the Edmonton Oilers. Chris Joseph. I think we have Jasmin joining us here as we try to bring her into the screen here. Hi, Jasmin.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to the Really Big Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited to have you, and a lot of the people in the comments are excited to have you. You're a pretty big deal.
I am just a random girl from Winnipeg over here.
We talk a lot about media on this show, and we talk about the Online News Act and how it's crippled and corrupted the media in Canada, and it's killed most of the independent outlets in Canada, or put them at the begging bowl. And you were a former journalist yourself. What's your thoughts on the Online News Act?
I think it was very destructive to the industry right off the hop. And there were a lot of big names in the industry as well that were concerned about it. I know at the time I was working in legacy media even, and the station that I was on, we had all of our social media accounts banned because we shared news. It took us 6 months to get them back. So there was a big hit to revenue and information. If you recall, even it was just after that had gone into effect, and there was wildfires, and there were citizens who couldn't even alert each other that their town was being evacuated, and people were resorting to taking screenshots of the news and then posting it in other ways without properly describing, exactly what it was that was going on, just to inform people what was happening. I think there's such a bizarre protectionist attitude when it comes to Canadian media that hurts the industry and protects a very few number of people. I'd also like to draw how funny it would be to see the outrage from all of those traditional leftists if Donald Trump were to ever say that he was putting into law all these things that Canadian media absolutely had to be priority, it had to be compensated, all of these things by the taxpayer, by other industries, by other platforms. People would lose their minds because rightfully so, it's ludicrous.
We were one such community because we had that forest fire here that was in West Kelowna that took, I think, a couple hundred houses out. And Stephen Feuer's was one of those homes that was lost. And then that was the exact thing. People couldn't share our news at the time because, we're a local outlet in this area. And we brought that concern to Stephen Feuer. We brought it to Mark Carney. We've written so many letters. We interviewed so many people. Stephen Feuer came out and said it needs to be repealed, but we get no action. And the only hope we have right now is that the U.S. State Department has made it as one of their 3 things that they said needs to change in Canada.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Ian?
it's just so at the end of the day, with the people who are coming up with these bills, the biggest question I have is why? Why? What's the purpose of it? Why? And it's usually monetary or narrative control at the end of the day. We saw just the other day with the Liberal government now declaring that they're not going to speak to certain people depending on their credentials. It's just, there's nothing free about it. And as I said as well, it did hurt a lot of other businesses, a lot of smaller radio stations, television stations, people who made their living on social media as well. It just adds this extra blockade that's so unnecessary. And it's under the guise of protecting Canadian culture. What is that these days even? Really? What are we really protecting? I don't know exactly what that is. So it's silly. It's very silly, to put it lightly.
I think Quebec is the answer to that. What is Canadian culture?
Fair enough.
Something to do with Quebec. We actually we asked Justin Trudeau just after that. We asked him about wildfires specifically because he came to West Kelowna. The PMO tried their very hardest to not let us get there, but somebody tipped us off, so we did get there. And we asked a question about C18, and I don't know if you remember, but that's when he had that massive rant where he's like, "This is on Meta." And Meta was presented as this evil company. And he then didn't really do anything. The Liberals spent millions of dollars on Meta. Mark Carney did in the election. And then when Justin Trudeau resigned, his first contact with the world was on Instagram, obviously. That picture of him in Canadian Tire.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just thought I'd add that just to sort of underline it. But I just wanted to ask you, because you were in the media, sort of the mainstream media, I guess, for about 10 years or something like that.
Yeah,
you
probably 10 and a
said that-
half, 11-ish. I mix it up when I say it, but I was in there for a long time. I got into the industry when I was 17, so I was quite young.
Wow. That is young, yeah. Well, you were in it for a long time, and you've said that you were prevented from discussing certain things. I heard you say that at, I think it was some kind of talk-in. But I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that. What exactly is it? And in light of the testimony yesterday from Travis Danraj, how was this achieved? How were you prevented from discussing the things that you wanted to discuss?
I actually think the way that Travis explained it in his testimony, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't recall exactly what it was verbatim, but he had alluded to the fact that there are people who get punished, and that you don't need to be directly told to do or not to do something. You see the ripple effect, the damage on people's careers when they step out of line. A really good example actually was early in my career. I was working for Rogers Media when Don Cherry was let go. And so that became this very well-known thing that you conduct yourself in a certain way. I will add, though, my career with Rogers Media was probably some of the best years of it, but there was still that layer of it nonetheless. I always go back to this one moment in particular, because sometimes it's not always coming up from top management or your producers or program directors. There's little nudges where you definitely know what to do, what not to do, and what side we're taking on this. A lot of times those little nudges are things like, this is too controversial, we're not talking about it at all. So, we're not talking about it at all. And then people will talk about it, but they'll only share the one side. And you quickly learn which part is controversial about it. But I know for myself, I've spoken on this publicly a number of times. What took place on October 7th was a really big one for me. And this command did not come from, somebody really high up. It came from one of my co-hosts who was in charge of the formatting of our show. That was part of their duties. And I was instructed very strongly to not talk about it at all. And I was doing a news program at the time. So obviously that's pretty big news. And so there was one morning where I had talked about it. There was an instance where Justin Trudeau had been swarmed at a Toronto restaurant somewhere. And I didn't actually even realize that this was in relation at the time, because the news had just broke. So we were still gathering details. I wasn't quite sure who it was, but it was protesters. And I wasn't even aware of that when I reported this at that moment. And I was yelled at over it. I told you not to talk about that. So I'm like, okay, my bad. Alrighty. I was literally, my story was just about Justin Trudeau getting swarmed by protesters, having to leave out of the emergency exit. That was the story. I didn't even mention who was protesting. So that was, a first big slap on the wrist. And then there were a couple of other times when there would be some other really breaking news a month, 2 months later, where I might just mention something to the effect of, here's the update that we have from sources, here's what's being reported. And same thing, where I've been yelled at so many times when I was working in that industry. There was very toxic work culture in nearly every place that I was a part of. And so ways like that, I think, and Travis kind of said that as well in his testimony when he mentioned that you don't necessarily have to be told directly by a superior, but the culture is there, the culture is enforced, and you see what happens to people who step out of those lines. So I felt very heard by him, and I have had private conversations with Travis as well over the last number of months, just kind of reflecting on both of our experiences. And it's nice to hear that there's some people speaking up about it in many ways that so many others can't, because they have been bought and paid out with NDAs that they signed where they're not able to speak on such matters. But even there were individuals who I worked with who were not a part of the trucker protest, but went there to cover it, who were pulled off the air afterwards for just doing a live stream saying, here's what's happening. Oh, look, there's some people handing out hot chocolate. This is cool. And then they fly back home after and they lost their jobs. I personally know people where that was the effect of them simply reporting the news on many things, even that's at times aren't even controversial at all. You're just updating people. And then I would also add, sorry that I'm talking for an hour. Welcome to my TED Talk. But I would also add that there was very much a big culture where there's a very few people who are allowed to actually make their opinions heard, and everybody else kind of follows suit. So you have different roles in various shows. And, I was not the smart one. I was not the one who knew everything. I was the one that everybody wanted to hang out with. And so you don't press too hard and you let somebody else kind of direct the conversation and the narrative. And with that, there was also a lot of instruction at numerous places that I worked for, where all of the official news was trusted and came from the CBC. So anything that the CBC posted, that was the stance that you took. That was the official source as Canada's broadcaster. I know not everywhere is like that, but that was certainly something that I experienced, where it was just repeat. You go on CBC, whatever it is that they're posting, how they're talking about it, that's what you mimic. And I know that there's a lot of people in universities and colleges as well, where that is very much the same experience when they're trying to get their degree. The CBC is the trusted source. Do not question it ever. They are God. So there's a lot of little ways for sure.
Yeah. A good job they never get anything wrong then.
Yeah. If only you did stories on their corrections page. My goodness.
There's I often mention, this is just something to add on to what Jasmin has said there, then you can go ahead, Jim, but there's an essay by George Orwell written in 1945 called Freedom of the Press. It was attached to one of the editions of Animal Farm. And he outlines this. I find it so strange with George Orwell because he's writing almost a century ago. I mean, some of his essays actually are from a century ago. And you'd think it's so far removed from us now. But I would advise everybody listening to this to read that essay because it's, he phrases in another way what you've just said, really, that there is no formal instruction. It's not like you're told, this is our line, don't deviate from it. It's kind of like self-regulation. It's like voluntary censorship. And I just wanted to highlight that. So read your Orwell, everyone.
Well, over the past few days, months now, we've seen floor crossings, and then we've seen the media reaction to those floor crossings. I just wanted to get your perspective on that. We've been quite vocal on it, and the respect for democracy and the vote. And the media doesn't seem to want to tell that side of the story.
I was quite impressed. I think it was this morning, NDP Heather McPherson was actually on CTV News, and she, for the first time in my life, said something I agreed with. But so she was referencing this and the fact, I think personally at this point, whoever it was that gave Mark Carney the advice that it's a good idea to respond to people like this. And we've seen a number of liberals as well. What's his name? Corey Hogan or something. He's a backbench liberal who very much wants to become famous on social media, it seems, if you judge his social media accounts and the weird things that he posts. Chris D'Entremont said this yesterday as well while speaking with the press, that Canadians, they don't vote for the party. They vote for the person who's going to make the best decision in their community. And that's been the regurgitated line by everybody. And Heather McPherson nailed this. She said it spot on, that the government knows that's not the case. And it's a really interesting way to try and say, you stupid Canadian voters, you just obviously didn't know what you were voting for. Here, we're going to tell you what you voted for. When in reality, anybody who is a taxpayer, who is a voter, sure, you're voting for a person to represent you in your jurisdiction. However, we all know that we vote for the party, the person that we vote for them due to what their policies are, their ideology is, their values, their morality, all of these things. And so, if the liberals want to try to tell everybody and insult their intelligence that you just simply didn't realize that you were voting for a person, in many cases, whose name most people who vote for them don't even know. Most people don't have any relationship with this person. They're voting for the party, and everybody knows that. And I think it is so ill-advised and so unbecoming to try to remove the nuance there and insult the intelligence of Canadians and the intention of Canadians. Because if what the liberals are saying was true, what's the need for ever having a party in the first place? Additionally, you would have conservatives voting for liberals and vice versa, left, right, and center, if you're only voting for the person who you like the most. Perfect example, Andrew Scheer, when I was younger and he was running, I was not a fan of him. I didn't relate to him. I was quite young at the time as well, but I just didn't really relate to him much. I do enjoy him a lot now, but back then it just wasn't for me, but I voted for him because I knew what he was representing and I knew the party banner that was behind him. And I voted based on policy, and that's how a lot of people are. So I think it's really foolish and really ill-advised. And I could see that perhaps even if they want to keep this up, turning into a position where Mark Carney becomes more hated than Justin Trudeau was. So I wish them good luck in that attempt at dismissing and gaslighting everybody, because we all know what's going on here. That's very clear. We know. And there's nothing you can say except for calling a by-election that's going to make that any different. But, in short, even though this has been very long, my opinions when it comes to floor crossers has always been the same. I feel this way no matter which party it is. There should always be a by-election. I think this situation is a little bit more notable because it does actually change the direction of government. Whereas in the past, when there's been floor crossers, it's not so tight that one or two is going to actually change the lay of the land, whereas in this case it is, and that is it's very reasonable to be criticizing that, questioning it, and to want a little bit more accountability on that.
You spoke at the Conservative convention there in Calgary just recently. Two questions for that is, one, do you think this reflects on Pierre, the losing the MPs, one, and then do you have any political aspirations as well?
First and foremost, I'll answer your second question. I do not at this point in time, at least. I admire all of our MPs. I admire everybody in those industries. They work so incredibly hard, and I have no desire to do that myself. Not right now. You never know. I mean, never say never, right? For all I know, 6 years passes, and all of a sudden, I think this is a good opportunity. But as it stands right now, it's not something I feel as though I can be much more impactful and effective being more so on the outside looking in and observing and informing than somebody who is actually a formal member of the party. And to be honest, I have 4 young nephews, and I can't even stand the thought of not being able to see them for a dinner on a weekend. So I couldn't imagine having to be flying to and from Ottawa. I'd love to watch those little men grow up. So that's another big one for me as well. But again, never say never. In terms of it affecting Pierre, I think that is a really common narrative, and I don't think it's fair to completely dismiss it. This one obviously was an NDP, but I would think that it would be much more valuable to focus more so on the particular aspects of the people who crossed more than the leader of the Conservative Party, right? I mean, in the case of Don Tremont, it was widely reported that he was very upset because he wanted the speaker role. He wanted to be appointed to the speaker role. He was not appointed. They held a party vote. He lost, and he was very upset about that. And reports afterwards came out from Melanie Joly saying that she had been trying to court him to cross the floor for about 5 years. I had heard in his situation as well from his neighbor that he didn't tell his family or anything at all. Like, his family found out about the decision the day that it was announced in a bit of a rush on his side as well. But so, there was a lot there that I think was more so a personal vendetta, and fair enough. What people are going to be people. In the case of Jean-Roux, I think that was a little bit more shocking to people. I heard from everybody that it was very unexpected, but it is what it is. And he got a great trip overseas out of it. So cool, I guess. And he also got a nice assignment out of it, as well as an advisory role, which I'm sure was very enticing. Michael Maw was one that again, a bit of a shock, but there's nothing surprising to me, I suppose, about backbencher MPs in particular, who are stuck with this government and they feel as though they cannot make an impact. So they may as well be in government. That's kind of the goal, right? That's why you run, is because you want to be in government. And so I would lend a lot more to the people's own aspirations or ability to try to get the things done in their community in the event that they actually care, more than I would being, the faults of the leader of the opposition by any stretch. I think it's a little much to suggest that it's all 100% lies at the feet of whoever it is that's the leader of the party. I will also say, and this is just a theory of mine, but even all of the frequent polling that we've seen as of late, I have wondered a lot, because it's very odd to have, at the point not even a year after an election, to be polling approval ratings for Pierre Poilievre versus Mark Carney, and to have those coming out in some cases multiple days a week. And I'm under the impression that I would not be surprised if all of that frequent coverage of how amazing Mark Carney is, how much Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are failing, if even that could be something to try to push some other backbenchers who perhaps aren't as aware of everything, but if they're at risk of, oh my goodness, if they call an election, I'm going to lose my riding if my riding is close, or if I don't want to even be campaigning again because I don't have the money for it, or whatever the reason may be. Maybe if I just join the government, well, then my job is safe for a few more years. So again, a total theory that's not based on a lot, but there's been a lot of interesting things that have happened all at once. And the narrative and the way that it's framing certain situations, that I would not be surprised, especially for people who are newer in politics, for something like that to also be something to somewhat push you to at least consider the offer, right? But I don't think there's anything good that comes out of this in terms of the apathy that it creates. that's probably intentional as well. And yeah, I'm worried for the future of Mark Carney if he continues with this attitude and just not really caring much about the people, or even the people who were running for the party in those particular ridings who are now out of a job. And you're going to have a lot of people that are really upset about that, right? So I can see there being a lot of backlash, more backlash for sure than anything positive that can come out of having a 1 or 2 seat majority.
I got a final question for you before I turn you over to Ian. When you left media, then you decided to do YouTube and various other channels. I imagine that was scary at first. What do you think of like the media landscape right now? Where do you think the future is for people like yourselves and ourselves, and where Canadians are turning for their news and for information?
Well, if you want to take a look at how the government speaks about people such as us, I think the future there is scary for sure. It's become quite evident that more and more Canadians, and even too, it's not even necessarily in terms of the information that you're getting, it's just how technology works these days as well, that there was this big void. And there are a lot of people who are not staying up to watch the 6 o'clock news. They're going to watch a video after it's published when they have time, right? But the fact that the amount of names that have been thrown at everybody, the amount of news articles, and ridiculous tie-ins that are so vague but leave just enough to question the individuals in them about Russia funding and all of these ridiculous things. Obviously, the Carney government does not like that. Obviously, the Liberals do not like that. They want control. They're very technocratic. That's not shocking. So I do fear for that, absolutely. I try not to stew on that too much, though, because I obviously still have a job to do and things that I'm passionate about and that I think matter. So we'll see. In terms of traditional media, even going back to Bill's C11 or C18, the fact that there's all these things talking about how we need to fund Canadian journalism, we need to fund Canadian media. But at the end of the day, those industries are shrinking even with extra funding. Even myself as an example, and I understand I'm likely blacklisted from most outlets at this point because I've gone so vocal about my political ideology. But there was no job openings at all when I left. And meanwhile, I was an award-winning broadcaster, morning show, had tons of experience. And there was nothing available. And that's just kind of the industry. It's very rare, and it was long before I left as well, that there was any new blood coming in. Most of the people who are in the industry, they might be new to your city, but they probably lived in another province right before then, and they were doing the same job over and over again. There is truly a very small group of people that are operating on all of the airwaves for, a top of maybe 5 different media companies. And that hasn't changed at all with more funding. If anything, things are getting even more consolidated. I was actually at a station in Toronto just 2 weeks ago, and I noticed that as well. Almost all of their shows were syndicated. There wasn't live talent there. You might think it's live. It's not. It's pre-recorded out of a studio in Toronto. And that's been the way of the industry for a really long time. So I do think the industry is shrinking. I don't think it's going to go away forever. There will always be a need for it. The common example given is that it's free. They charge advertisers, but they give you a product for free. And so there will always be a need for that in some shape and form. I don't see it growing at all. I could see CBC just continuing to give themselves really big bonuses. Jealous. So it's just, the whole thing is really bizarre, and obviously trying to protect the industry more by wasting taxpayer dollars on it is not helping. And I think the industry could truly thrive if all of the regulations and restrictions were pulled off finally, and they could compete in the marketplace, and they could actually make decisions based on whether or not it was helping them or hurting them, instead of just making decisions because they want to, and they don't have to worry about it because they're going to get their money anyway.
Ian?
Do we have time for some more questions?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sorry, I've been talking for an hour.
Okay. You've already you've spoken all about Carney, so you've already kind of answered this question, but I think I have to ask you, about the Carn dog, since it's his it's the Carniversary, isn't it, on Saturday? 1 year in power. But you've spoken about a lot of sort of facets of Mr. Carney, so I thought I'd just ask you this specific one. What is it about him that lots of Canadians find so mesmerizing? Why is it that he can just do no wrong, and he's almost like an unopposed prince, isn't he? He's like the glorious prince returning home. Do you have any insights into that? What like, maybe that's like a psychological question, I don't know, or sociological, but what do you think?
I am of the belief that it has much less to do with him and much more to do with the body around him. I think that in many cases, if he did not have the constant fanfare, frothing at the mouth, King Carney, Supreme Leader King John Carney, I don't think if that was erased, people would still love him. I think that they would oftentimes think, what did you just say? That doesn't make sense. You just contradicted yourself. Wow, he was really rude to that reporter. He's not talking about any of the things that matter. He hasn't done anything. But because there's this constant fanfare and again, this constant framing of the opposition being the number one topic, which is incredible to me. I mean, if you take a look at CBC's website, even as an example, and I understand that their viewership has decreased significantly. It does year over year. In many markets, they're not even on the top 12 rating sheets anymore, which is really bad. So having said that, though, the message that they have has a base of some sort that does spread. Words matter, things spread, and you tell one person, that person tells people, sorry. So, I understand that those numbers are declining, but there are still people who are traditionally getting their information in places where it's just these crazy echo chambers. I mean, a prime example is if you go onto Facebook, it's filled with all of the Carney lovers. And if you try to correct any of them by submitting a Stats Canada article, as an example, you're met with, oh, you can't submit content like this in Canada on Facebook. So there's no way to counter that messaging in the slightest. And if you go onto CBC's website, as I was saying, and you type in Mark Carney in the search results, there's like a little over 1,000 searches. If you type in Donald Trump, there's over 10,000. If you type in Pierre Poilievre, there's close to 10,000. If you type in Justin Trudeau, there's close to 10,000. And obviously a lot of that is due to just the duration of when people were in politics. But it seems really crazy to me that even if you break down those search results to the last year, there are more articles about Pierre Poilievre and Donald Trump than there are about our own government. That's really concerning. And I highly encourage people to type that in and test it out for themselves and break it into certain time periods, because it's really eye-opening for what it is that they want you to focus on. So I think that there's a lot of that. I also think too, Mark Carney's been appointed to every position that he has had essentially since his first 1 or 2 jobs. Most of them he's lasted no longer than 4 to 5 years. And I think with that obviously comes a lot of power behind you of people who are willing to advocate for your name. And we did see a lot of that as well in this past election. So I don't think it has much to do with him, what he's doing, how he speaks to people, especially when you consider the fact that not even 20 years ago, liberals hated global elitists. They hated central bankers. They protested against them. And now they're so elated to have one that they elected as prime minister, and they want to call us far right. That's interesting. So I just think there's a lot about the fanfare around him, less about him as a person, because he isn't relatable to the average person. His life is completely polar opposite to any of ours. There's very few moments. I mean, if you recall even what his Christmas card looked like this year, it's like, did you get this made at a Walmart? What is this? No offense to Walmart photos. Sometimes they turn out, but that one did not. But there's no relatability to him at all. And I recall as well his first time being interviewed in French. I think this was right after, no, this was when he was Liberal leader or something to the effect. I don't think the actual election had happened yet. I could be wrong there though. But somebody had asked him about the price of groceries, and his answer was, well, I'm prime minister, so I don't pay for my own groceries. I don't know what the price is. In what world is that relatable to Canadians? In what world, And so there's just example after example about that. And I think it's going to take a lot of people really hitting rock bottom before they can start to put those pieces together. I'm not going to say that Mark Carney is this total failure, though GFANZ, every major bank pulled out, and pretty much every one of his grand ideas hasn't come to fruition, and it's a theory. He's obviously very good at selling himself, and I think there's a lot of people behind the scenes who are equally invested in doing that for him so that they can continue to rule and just do everything that they want, not for our benefit, but for theirs.
I just want to add to that. You talked about the groceries. Just wanted to add that what amazed me most about that is not that he said it, but it was the response to it from, the big boy media voices. They all came out and they were like, I really respect his candor. He's had all these big jobs. He's so successful, everybody. Like, he's just being honest. And maybe that's going to tell us what we're going to get. We're going to get honest Mark. Just this ability to kind of turn his faux pas, like his mistakes, turn them around. And like you said, make it about Pierre Poilievre or something like that. Or somehow make it a good thing that he's done this. Like these floor crossings, we had a laugh, didn't we, Jim? Looking at the articles where it's like, what is it about Mark Carney? Like, what? He's so great. Rather than concentrate on, the democratic deficit, which is very real and is concerning a lot of people. So I think I agree with your thesis. Then, to some extent, is what I'm saying, that it's that people are willing to run cover for him, and then it doesn't become a story. And the time, so many come to mind, but the time where he insulted Donald Trump and mocked him and laughed about how he didn't understand economics. That was an interview with The Economist, I think. And I saw that and I just thought, like, this is extraordinarily unprofessional. Like, this is very bad. This is a real sort of mistake. And it wasn't even picked up. And then, not to mention the many times that he's made basic economic errors, like GDP, statistics and things like that, I say this to Jim, like, random people on Twitter know these statistics, but he, for some reason, just keeps, almost like he's trying to troll us or something. He's trying to, like, see, like, are you going to pick up on it, or do you just worship me that much that you won't even pick up on it? But
I actually, just to that point, I think even a portion of that as well is, and I don't mean to speak too much out of turn here or make an offhanded remark, but it really does seem that there are so many Canadians who are genuinely struggling so much and hurting so much, whose voices are not being heard at all. And they finally get somebody who comes in and is like, I'm going to save you. And he has this brilliant resume of essentially being an activist NGO for the most part. And his brilliant resume of all these great things. And that's the man who's going to save us. And I think that even in there's something with the Canadian psyche. I think after the lockdowns, we experienced that, or we really got to see that for the first time, how many Canadians they just don't pay attention to these things that much. And fair enough, life is hard and it's busy. I mean, you don't have time to pay attention to these things this much. But there's a lot of Canadians out there who just really want somebody to save them. They want somebody who looks impressive. And for him, on paper, he looks impressive. But you should never, ever rely on a government to save you, ever. And if a government comes in and says that they're going to save you, you should be very afraid of that person. So I think that's an aspect of it as well. Anyway, random little point.
That's an old Ronald Reagan quote. We're from the government. We're here to help. And he said, run.
Yeah, exactly.
You talked about the CBC there. The only thing going up for the CBC is cost per viewer, because they are losing tons of viewers, but their costs keep going up. And we'd share a lot of data on this show here, a lot of charts. And the charts show Canada struggling and most Canadians struggling. Like, even they don't even seem to get it. We showed a clip today where Francois Philippe Champagne said 3 in 5 Canadians are paying NSF fees. And he's talking about how we're going to save you by saving you the few bucks there, but doesn't take any responsibility for why are 3 in 5 Canadians writing NSF checks.
Yep.
Yeah, was it 1 in 3, 3 in 5? I don't know. It's a lot of people.
It's high.
It's high. We do thank you for your time. And again, so many people are turning to YouTube and Twitter and different things. I think X, Elon Musk. Maybe I'll ask you about Elon Musk. Elon Musk, in our opinion, may have saved Western democracy by buying X and taking censorship off of it, and then the other ones followed suit shortly thereafter, right? Because you got to remember that all these platforms deplatformed a sitting president. While he was a sitting president, deplatformed him, and it took Elon Musk to kind of break that bond, and that's one of the targets of the Liberals is they seem to always come out and say they want to get rid of X as well.
Well, there's a reason why they hate it so much, right? They don't want to get rid of Blue Sky, though.
No, Blue Sky's great.
Or Reddit as well. That's another hive of villainy.
Reddit has disappointed me so much. I used to love Reddit, and now I go on there, and it's, what episode of Black Mirror is this?
Well, I think it's the activist moderators, isn't it? It just goes to show that overregulation can kill a good thing.
But that also goes to show, perhaps, to put some of the power back in the people, because if they can do it, so can people who have common sense, right? And I think they bank on apathy, they bank on overwhelming you, but the power of the people exists. There's all these things that have happened. Why? Because they got people behind it. And I think that can go both ways for sure. So it can feel, it's very easy to cave to the apathy that's put in front of you, that it makes you feel, but the power of the people is always here, and it's up to us to try to correct the wrongs that are made by people who are making them intentionally for their own gain and not for the betterment of our country and our communities.
Well, I do thank you for coming on, Jasmin. We're very appreciative of that. And
thank you.
And we'll talk to you again, I'm sure. And until next time, we do thank you for watching Now Media. That's okay. That's okay. You can cut it off.